Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now let's talk sports. Nigeria's senior women's national football team, the Super Falcons, on Wednesday last week, defeated co-host Australia by 3-2 in their second group game at the ongoing Women's World Cup. That result underlined the team's determination to make the most of their time down under and shot them to the top of the group. The team now needs to win their last group game against Republic of Ireland or even go through to the second round with a draw, depending on the result of the other game involving Australia and Olympic champions Canada. Right now, we're being joined by Professor Sadiq A. Abdullahi of Florida International University and a teacher with Miami-Dade School District in the United States. He will share his thoughts on the exploits of the Nigerian girls and also African women at the World Cup and how the benefits can be brought to bear in the development of Nigerian football and also, of course, other issues about sports management, sports development in Nigeria particularly. Welcome to This Day Live, Professor Abdullahi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Well, let's start with the World Cup. The Super Falcons seem to be doing very well, and there's great expectation that they are going to qualify for the group of 16. But the major issue here is, what do you think of the development of women's football? The Falcons, they are 9-time African champions. Now they are in New Zealand and Australia against the background of initial protests about match bonuses, including even Ian Wright, the Arsenal legend, and UK football personality, saying, pay them their bonuses, encourage these women so that they can do well. But the other side of it is that while the women are doing very well in football and other sports, the Super Eagles, they seem not to be doing so well. Where do you think the disconnect is with regard to sports development? And how do you feel about the Super Falcons getting to this stage? They were able to draw with Canada. They managed to beat, Australia 3-2.
Thank you again. I would like to begin with the Super Falcons. The expectation is that they will beat Ireland in the next game to lead the group. And then if they do that, then they will avoid playing England in the second round. The way they've been performing so far is highly commendable, and if they continue to do that, they will make us very proud and move on beyond the second round and possibly get to the quarterfinal. Then regarding the sports development, women's football, with the new administration in the Nigerian Football Federation, led by Nkechi Obi, who's now the CEO of the women's football, we expect that a lot of these issues and problems will be resolved. It has been like that for a very long time, that yes, there's a disconnect between women's football and the men's football. And we've seen that over time, the women's football players have done very well, have made us very, very proud. Whereas the men team are struggling, to get to the World Cup.
Okay, we have 4 African teams representing us there. Nigeria, South Africa. South Africa, we saw putting up a spirited performance against Argentina. It was a draw, 2-2. But, the Bayana, they were not disgraced. Their second appearance in the Women's World Cup. Morocco managed to beat Korea, and they made history with one of their players, Benzema, being the first person to play in the World Cup wearing the hijab. The FIFA having agreed in 2014 to allow the hijab. So they made history. They also managed to win, against South Korea. Okay, Zambia may not get to the next round. You have Nigeria, they are making the headway for Africa. Is there some symbolism around this?
Absolutely, there are, yeah, and it goes to the level of preparation in some of these African countries, and that allow them to be able to perform at a very high level. Morocco is doing very, very well in terms of leading the continent in African women football. In Nigeria, we're also trying to resolve some of the problems that we have in terms of what you mentioned earlier, paying them well, their welfare, training, coaches. We had a problem in the beginning from with the coach, and eventually it was resolved, and now he is doing very well. So the symbolism there is that yes, there's now awareness, heightened awareness of women football in the continent, and we expect that to continue to grow, and that will attract more players in football, in women football.
Okay, but Prof, do you think that this year's Women World Cup, that the motivation, the excitement, is because FIFA is paying big bonuses to the ladies from all over the world? How about the role of money in sports, considering the fact that even top footballers are heading towards Saudi Arabia because of the money?
Yeah, the money is driving global sports, and FIFA is taking the lead. And if you see what is going on internationally, especially in the United States, where the equal pay movement is going on. So we're trying to see how that is going to affect the rest of the world. But money is definitely driving. So by raising the pay for women, it gets corporate world to be now interested. They want to get more young females playing the game. So we should see that to continue, to raise the standard of sports, football in the world.
So how far do you think that the Super Falcons at this year's Women's World Cup are likely to go?
No, they've shown that they have the capability. They've shown that they can work together. The midfield, the goalkeeper is doing very well. She's doing very well. So we expect, to at least get to the quarterfinals. If they do not, play against England, if they beat Ireland in the next game, then they will avoid playing England, and that will give them more opportunity. But if not, and they meet England in the second round, then we have to see what they do.
No, we can beat England. I have no doubt about that. The Lionesses, they are not invincible. The Super Falcons can beat them. The Super Falcons can fly higher and punch the Lionesses in any case. That's by the way. You were involved in sports development in Nigeria under Sunday Dari as Minister of Sports, and you were a consultant to the Nigerian government. You people wrote a lot of papers. Okay, you submitted heaps of paper. The plan was to modernize, the sports sector in Nigeria. Talking honestly, I've not seen any modernization. What did you people do? You just collected allowances and submitted heaps of paper. What did you modernize? The various major stadiums are not in a good position. The one in Lagos is not working. The one in Abuja, the Moshood Abiola Stadium, is not okay. Maybe we have one in Uyo, Akwa Ibom. So what did you guys really do?
No, we weren't paid. We didn't collect any money. I didn't collect any money. I became part of the team in 2019 when I was invited again by Nkechi Obi, who was the chairman of the sports industry thematic group, to come in and be part of the team that eventually wrote the national sports industry policy 2022 to 2026. All of the information is in the policy. At least we have a policy now, that now will allow, provide a lot of incentives, a lot of infrastructure, and then of course the participation involving the private sector. This is a private sector driven document that will allow the modernization. There's no modernization now. It is expected, that after the federal government releases the incentive package for the private sector or anybody that wants to invest in sports development, then we should expect that. Personally, I do not see that happening now that we have a new government coming in. But we do have a document that we can now go back and refine and then bring us together. We still have a long way to go, because if you look back to the history of sports development, if you look at during the PDP period, the 16 years, now the 18 years, and then we'll look at what we have right now, we can see that we've not really taken advantage of the what sports can provide to the youth and then to the nation. But that's the direction that we're going.
Okay, Professor Abdullahi, there's this so much talk about private sector involvement, which I guess is from that policy paper that the former government was working on, the former administration. Why should anybody invest in sports as a business in an environment like this, where transportation is an issue and where there's so much disconnect between policy and reality?
And that's going to be the challenge, right? The economy is not ready, to allow for private or foreign investment in sports. That's a fact. I've been around the country for the last 5 weeks. I've gone around. I have felt it. And I've spoken to a lot of people that are telling me how difficult it is for them to even put food on the table. I understand that. So we need to continue to build our home and then expect that economy will improve over time. And that's a promise from the present administration that things will get better. But for us, there are other fundamental issues affecting sports development in Nigeria. If those fundamental issues are not resolved, then the private sector confidence will not be there. Corporate confidence will not be there. So the stakeholders, all of us in the diaspora as well as here, must now look at all of the papers that have been written and then identify what is practical, what is doable, and then focus on what needs to be done. We need to address the issue of corruption, either directly or indirectly, that that we see the politics that is really impacting sports in Nigeria. Those have to be addressed. In the US, for example, where the federal government does not get involved in sports, they don't have that problem, right? And then the local problem, in the US, the local government, the state government involved through schools. So we need to go back and then do that. We're still work in progress.
Okay, Professor Abdullah, I'd like to cite the example of Jerry Okorododo, who died recently. His corpse was seized by the hospital because they said his family could not pay 600,000 naira. Eventually, people rallied around before his corpse was released. Many Nigerian sportsmen and women end up in similar circumstances. I know I met you at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs a few days ago, where the NIA and Air Peace did a wall of fame to honor athletes, sportsmen and women, 1976 Olympics, 1986 Cup of Nations, people who have made sacrifice for this nation. So that's a demonstration of the extent to which the private sector can go. Okay, you are in the country. I saw you in the morning. I saw you in the evening. Can you share with us what you think is the significance of that intervention?
Very significant, and that is an example of a private sector intervention, either directly or indirectly. But the issue here is recognition, and then, of course, celebration, and then going back, in time, because somehow the federal government failed during that period to see the significance of boycotting the Olympics in 1976. And these athletes have kept that in them for a very long time. And some of them disconnect, and some of them just give up in the country. But with now that this has happened. As those of people that I met, Charlton and the rest, Bruce and the rest, now I can see a renewed hope, a renewed interest in trying to be part of developing sports, improving sports, and also sustaining sports. That is the conversation now. So that is number one. Number two, then when we're talking about welfare, to be very honest, to Sunday Dare, right, and the last administration, in their goals, they had this athletes welfare as one of the priority areas. And he did well, at least to his best of his own ability, by providing money, to players that died, Sam, Koridudo, and then the rest, families, and then did that. So what needed to do, and then come back to Jerry's case. Jerry's case is unfortunate because when Jerry was finishing his professional or amateur boxing career, he was given an approval to go to the United States by either the Boxing Federation and the Ministry of Youth and Sports, that go for this training. When he came back, he was not absolved. He was not given a position in the sports ministry. And that was the beginning of the problem that led, to him giving up. And there's been a lot of debate about that, what he should have done, what the government should have done. But people are saying if he had been employed by the federal government after you give him an approval, then at least there'll be money coming in steadily for him over here. And he's been struggling with that until his death.
Well, Nigerian disappoints many people. But this private sector thing, what is in it for private sector? Allen Onyema and Airpeace that supported this walk of fame, recognizing, former athletes, giving them 1.5 million, promising them free rides for the rest of their lives, giving them plaques, honoring them in collaboration with the NIA. Now, what is in it for the private sector? Why should the private sector be motivated? This Allen Onyema, who has brought people from South Africa, brought people from other places where they are stranded, his name was not even on the last national honors list. But he says he loves his country. He wants to continue to give. So why should any other private sector guru want to do anything for sports if Nigeria shows no appreciation?
And that's going to be the challenge, and that's going to be the turning point, right, in appreciating individuals that come out, to help. With this event, I met Dr. Allen Onyema, and then we spoke very briefly. And I told him, that this is going to be a turning point. The sacrifices, we athletes that benefited from, I wasn't part of the 78s because that wasn't my generation, but I was there to support my brother and friend Shegun Degbami, and then met a lot of the friends. Adoke Amesmaker. Yes, we connected. Because intellectually we've been, talking for 5 hours. We were there talking about these issues, that you are raising, and then try to recommit. So there's going to be a commitment, from us. We have to get our own house in order, right? The government cannot really do it. It's going to be the private sector that will drive sports development, improvement, and then sustainability. Government will always be providing facilities. You mentioned the dilapidation of stadium around the world. It is because of leadership and governance, because you still have a board of federations and then you have individual leaders. Until we find individuals that have capacity, I've been hearing that all the time, that bring in someone who is committed, patriotic, and understand the business and the politics of sports, then he will now go and then bring like-minded individuals, so that we can now reclaim private individual confidence and then wait for the economy to turn around. Once the economic turn around, when we have middle class Nigerians, we close that gap, then you're going to see a lot of development because in industrialized nation, it is the middle class that produce a lot of the champions. In Africa, it is my story and many other story. We came from poor families, but during my time in the 70s, the climate was very good, and things have not gotten back. So if we can improve those, government can improve those areas, then we're going to see a lot of participation and then get more people, mass participation in blood at the primary and secondary school level. We have to go back to that, and then government must invest in schools. There are different models in the US how we've done it, and then we can replicate that here, and that is part of the reason why I am here.
Well, on that note, Professor Sadiq Abdullahi, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on this Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel.